Hello, everyone. Welcome back to For the Girls. We are here today with a preview for the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, otherwise known as the Imola Grand Prix. Or if you've been watching or seeing all of the F1 memes this week and you want the full name, it is technically the Formula One MSC Cruises Gran Premio del Made in Italy del Emilia Romagna 2024.
That's a mouthful.
Indeed. And it switches from like English to Italian, one word in English, and then back to Italian.
Made in Italy. Eh.
Yeah, it's confusing. So stick around for that and then wait till the end of the episode because we have not one, not two, but three epic interviews from our time with Red Bull in Miami. We have one-on-ones with the Al-Kubaisi sisters, F1 Academy drivers Hamda and Amna, and the one and only Alpine skiing legend, Lindsey Vonn. So let's jump in. I'm Chessa.
And I'm Tiggy. I'm so excited for you guys to hear all interviews, but talking to Lindsey Vonn was so surreal. I mean, she's just an absolute legend. And we did ask her a question of what it was like to be dominant, similar to how Max is right now.
Yeah.
And so stay tuned for that. But some background on the race. So this is the first European race of the season, also first of 2 Grand Prix in Italy, with the second being the Italian Grand Prix at Monza in September. This week, it's held in Imola, as Chessa said, which is a town in the northern Italian region of Emilia-Romagna. Last year's race was actually canceled due to extreme and dangerous flooding in the region. This was very sad, very shocking. The rains were deadly last year. About 10,000 people also had to be evacuated. F1 donated €1 million to the relief fund. And big shout out to Yuki, who spent a lot of time there last year helping clean up. And I'm sure there were others as well. But Yuki was definitely one of the ones who stuck around for a long time. So shout out to Yuki. But this year, as of the time we are recording this, there are some thunderstorms predicted for Sunday. So we hope they're nothing like last year and that everyone stays safe, but excited for the first European race of the season.
Let the Euro leg begin.
Kind
of. And then we go back, and then we go to Montreal, but then we go back. So this circuit is on the shorter side, 4.9 kilometers, 63 laps, and only one DRS zone. Tiggy, you'll be happy, but the lap record is still held by Lewis Hamilton from 2020. And this circuit is really unique for lots of reasons. One, it runs counterclockwise, so that's extra G-force on the driver's necks. It also has a decent amount of elevation changes, so there's some hilly track sections, and as a spectator, it's amazing to watch. But not only is it hilly and has hilly sections, there's also a lot of complex curves, which makes it a very challenging and technical track, and there's a lot of trees, so sometimes shadows make it really hard to see the braking points and things when the drivers are turning. The top speed is around 190 miles per hour, so pretty quick, but notoriously hard to pass. So quality is going to be extra important this weekend. And then this is also one of those old classic European tracks where some of the turns have names. So if you're watching the broadcast this weekend and hear some of the names, so turn 2 and 3 are called Tamburello, turn 7 Tosa, and then turn 9 Piratella.
I love those. I love hearing those on the broadcast too. They're
It's
so
great.
Fun. For some history, we do love the history of how this track was built. So at the time, it was part of a plan to address unemployment and stimulate the local economy, while, of course, catering to the growing interest in motorsport in the region. So Enzo Ferrari, the father of Ferrari, was involved in the project from the outset and was actually there when they laid the foundation in March 1950. So this race, unfortunately, has a lot of sad history as well. It was the scene of Ayrton Senna's deadly crash in 1994. When he went into the concrete barrier while he was leading the race. The previous day as well, Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger had died when his car crashed during quali for the race. So Sebastian Vettel will be driving Senna's McLaren MP4-8, the last car he won a race in 1993, and display it for fans across the race weekend. So that will be beautiful, a very nice tribute, and so glad that Seb is doing that. This track also has a rich history in F1, hosting the first San Marino Grand Prix in 1980 and remaining on the F1 calendar until 2006 when it was dropped due to financial reasons and track renovations. But in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, it made a grand return to the F1 calendar, hosting the, as we know and love, Emilia Romagna Grand Prix as part of the revised schedule. And
Say
here
the
we
whole
are.
thing, Tiggy.
The MSC Cruises made in Italy.
It's so long. Okay, so we'll talk about the last race, knowing that the last race was actually in 2022, and it did not disappoint. It was an interesting race, chaotic weather conditions, which is very, I guess, normal this time of year in that region. And there was a safety car in the opening laps. Plus, it was also a sprint weekend 2 years ago. So the way it went down, the race started in the rain, and there was an early safety car when Danny had what they later deemed as just a racing incident with Carlos. With Carlos, and Carlos had to retire. And this was when Danny was still driving for McLaren, fun fact. And really the whole race, because of the weather, it came down to a lot of different tires and strategy and pit stop strategy. And so it was basically a battle between Max, Checo, and Lando for much of the race. And then late in the race, Charles spun out. He hit the wall. He had a moment. He dropped to P9 because he had to pit for new tires and a new nose. And then he only was able to recover to P6 because it was so late in the race. So then in the end, we had Max winning, Checo P2. And then we had Lando rounding out the podium, which was really nice. And he essentially got promoted twice with Carlos DNFing and then Charles spinning out. So it was a bad weekend for a Ferrari, is in summation.
Yes, but Lando, look at where we are now.
Indeed.
For the team, so Red Bull upgrades are the talk of the town this weekend. Red Bull is one among many teams bringing updates this weekend. And when asked, the team said that these are planned upgrades and not a result of the successful upgrades that McLaren brought to Miami. So big news flash, Red Bull is not copying any team.
They were like so adamant at being like, we're on the front foot, like we're not reacting because other teams are doing better. But
it's so funny.
Yeah.
They're definitely, I mean, as much as you can say Red Bull is feeling the heat, they probably are feeling a little bit more pressure as other teams are getting closer to them on race pace. Ferrari's looked really good, McLaren now as well. So I still think Red Bull probably has it in the bag, but you never know. We have a long season ahead, and it's fun to see some other teams start to close the gap.
Thank God. Speaking of which, Ferrari, so they were strong competitors to the Red Bull pace in Miami, and they'll be bringing an upgrade to Imola, of course, trying to close that gap. And this is a home race for them, and it's back to back with the race in Monaco. So they definitely have some momentum. They think the car will do well in what we are calling the European swing. So they're excited for that. And then the team has also replaced Charles Leclerc's race engineer. So starting in Imola, Javi Marcos will step down into a different role within the team. And then Brian Bozzi will step up as Leclerc's new race engineer. He was previously a performance engineer.
And for context, Javi has been Charles's race engineer since he started at Ferrari in 2019. And I think someone had commented on the newsreel asking if this is normal, if drivers switch race engineers a lot, or if it's more rare. I think it's definitely more rare, especially because it's such an intense, intimate relationship between driver and race engineer, and you have to spend a lot of time together. And it's risky, I think, to do it mid-season. So I think something definitely went down, and Javi and Charles have had some testy radio messages over the course of their time together. But yeah, it's definitely not a super common thing.
And it's good that they're promoting from within the team, though, because again, like your race engineer is like your little, he's in your ear, he or she is in your ear the entire race, and you want to be able to have that like intimacy and familiarity with someone. So promoting from within the team.
For sure. For Mercedes, so the team has announced significant upgrades for this weekend. So far this season, they've struggled with inconsistency, performance. These updates are aimed at widening, quote, its usable window. So basically trying to make the car more predictable and stable instead of having only super small windows when the car performs as expected. When we were listening to Lewis talk in Miami, that was kind of the big focus of his talk to everybody of like, this car has such a short window of performance. And so that's why I was super happy with my lap in quali, for example. And then when we got to the sprint, or I forget exactly which session.
Yeah, I think that was it.
When we got to the sprint, it was all gone, which is kind of crazy. You don't really think about cars being temperamental beasts, but Mercedes definitely is struggling with that. But the upgrades will come over the next few races. They'll be suited to tracks with lower speed corners, which definitely gets them set up well for Monaco and hopefully Montreal as well. So let's see what they can bring.
For McLaren, of course, the team is riding a massive high after Miami with Lando's first win and the team's first win since Danny won the 2021 Italian GP. So they'll be looking to keep that momentum going, keep the pressure on the other teams. Plus, we clearly saw the upgrades that they brought to Miami pay off. Like you saw how well Lando was doing. So they will be looking to maintain that edge. And then, all the other teams are also upping the ante with a development race. So they'll be fighting neck and neck in there. And then one thing to know is in Miami, we did see how well Oscar was doing at the beginning of the race. And he only had half of the new package in Miami. So he's going to have the full package this weekend, and we'll fully get to see how the McLaren upgrades will shine.
It's been so fun to see the McLaren content and see the McLaren team celebrating, and Lando as well. It reminds you how rare it is to have a driver have their first win, and especially someone like Lando after so many race starts. If you haven't listened to our Lando deep dive from Monday, definitely do so because it adds some more context to the whole ride and the whole journey. But yeah, it's been such a blast to watch all of this. For Aston Martin, although they only had minimal points in Miami, Alonso finished P9. He had a strong race given that he started in P15. So they had brought upgrades to Miami to help them translate quali pace to race pace. That seemed to help a little bit, but let's hope that they can also lock in strong quali sessions here since quali is so important in Imola. So we shall see, but fingers crossed for them.
For VCARB, the team did have a decent showing in Miami. So Danny got P4 in the sprint race, which was great. And then wait, we have to pause here. Did we talk about what your mom said to Danny in the elevator? She was like, good job on the first half of today.
So congrats on the first half of your day.
So Danny only got P4 the first half of the day, and then the second half of the day, as Tiggy's mom noted, digressed a bit. But great for the team. And then Yuki finished P7 and grabbed some points for VCARBs. That's amazing. I think the big storyline or thing to look out for here is Yuki's real consistency as of late in showing up Danny and kind of like outperforming him. So we'll have to keep an eye on that.
As a belated Mother's Day shout out to my mom. We've also received some DMs since being in Miami saying that they heard about the podcast from my mom just throughout the circuit. So she's putting in work. Thank you, Mom. For Alpine, Ocon picked up his first points of the season in Miami. So very exciting. It was only 1 point in constructors, but that is something hopefully that gives them a little bit of momentum heading into the European leg. It's been a tough ride for them, but I'm hoping for more, and I hope that Gasly can get up there as well.
Let's go. Yeah, I think it's also been a tough ride for Stake. They have no points, so Alpine only has one, but Stake has none. So they're looking, as they said in some press conferences this week, to reset and understand what went wrong after a tough weekend in Miami, which is like the only thing that you can say in a statement when you haven't done much all season.
Ugh, brutal. For Haas, K-Mag coming off penalties galore from Miami. He'll definitely be a little bit on edge. He's racked up a lot of penalty points. He's only 2 points away from getting a 1 race ban. So could we potentially see Ollie Berman back in the car sooner than we think? That's possible. We'll get to the other Haas news around Gunther Steiner in a few, but yeah, some lawsuits ongoing there as well. Not super happy times.
And for Williams, actually lots to discuss here. So no points yet for the team, but Albon has had 2 P11 finishes. So let's see. And speaking of Albon, he just signed a multi-year contract extension with Williams. So he will not be going to Red Bull as many people had been speculating. Tig, what do you think?
I guess my first reaction to this was shock. Like, wow, this
Really?
was early to lock him in. Yeah, because we've been talking all season about how Albon was going to be the hottest driver on the driver market for 2025. To be fair, that was before we knew that Carlos lost his seat. But I do feel like Albon, we sort of like forgot about Albon as all the Carlos stuff has been happening.
That's true.
Some of the other seat movements, but I am actually surprised that Albon signed this early and a multi-year extension. I do think, as we've said before, there's definitely something to be said with being at a team that you can build upon. And Williams, they've taken a little bit of a step backwards over the last few races, but have had a stronger start to the season than they have in years prior. So I think it makes sense that Albon is the number 1 Williams driver. I think it definitely hinges on who joins him. If it's Kimi Antonelli, Albon is the perfect second driver for that team because he can sort of take Kimi under his wing and teach him all he needs
Yeah.
to know. But yeah, I was surprised he signed so early. I was surprised it was multi-year, but in hindsight 2020, I think it definitely makes sense for both parties. Definitely makes sense for Williams, but yeah,
Yeah,
definitely a
that's
little
why I
surprised.
didn't feel like when I saw it come up, I was like, oh, okay. Like totally makes sense. You're right that it did come a little bit early if we think that Albon being the hot ticket that he is had like some bargaining power, maybe it could have lasted a lot longer, but you can't discount the relationship with the team and the relationship with the principal. Like, I don't know, I think between him and Williams, there's a lot of really good chemistry. Like he does seem like the face of the team. Him and James Vowles have a lot of amazing chemistry as well, and you can't discount that either. Like I was looking today, like they have this cute little like sit down that Williams posted about how the contract got signed, and Albon was like, "Yeah, I was like going to kiss stingrays and caimans, and like on the drive there, I had to stop and sign the paperwork." And James was like, "Yeah, I know. I was like sitting at the office waiting to go home, and you were being so slow, like to sign the papers."
That's
So
hilarious.
they have some good chemistry. I think to me it kind of feels like a no-brainer if they can get him like a great teammate. I think we've decided, Tiggy, the way that you were speaking makes it seem like you know that it's not going to be Sargent.
I don't think you ever know anything in F1, but I do feel like if it's right now taking a bet on someone like Kimi Antonelli, who is rumored to be the next hotshot of F1, which is also always a bet, versus Logan, who has now had a season plus almost a season and a half to prove himself. And granted, a lot of the stuff this year has not been his fault, but he just, I don't think, has performed in the way that would give Williams the confidence to give him a third season, which is unfortunate, but we still don't know. Well, you can never say
I just
never.
don't want Kimmy to go for 1 year and then leave. But I actually don't think Mercedes would take him right away in 2026. I think they'd give him like 2 years at Williams maybe
I don't
still.
know. I feel like with the new regulations, it's hard. Maybe like do all the big changes at once. Like everybody's going to be adjusting. So bringing Kimmy to Mercedes with the new regulations versus
I hate
having
that for
him.
Williams though.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's definitely interesting with Albon. Another chip has fallen into place, takes him off the driver market, which is super interesting. You wonder who's going to go to Mercedes. There are still so many things up in the air.
We
But
shall see. In last little bit of Williams news, they have collaborated with Michelob Ultra on a new show called Lap of Legends, which is live as of Tuesday this week. So basically, using all sorts of technology, they've basically enabled Logan Sargent to race against 6 of the greatest Williams legends of all time, like in a virtual race. So
yeah, they've taken the laps of all of these Williams legends on, I don't know if it's multiple tracks or one track, but they've basically mapped out those drivers' races, and Logan is racing against those that time in those like racing lines, which is super cool.
very cool. Okay, let's do our hot takes. I have to just say, I've never been more excited to watch a race. This is
Wow.
no, this feels like a very optimistic race for me. It's the first time we've had a non-Max win without Max DNFing this season. So haters gonna hate, but like a non-Max win on purely merit, maybe.
So you think
So
lightning can strike twice?
yeah, Tiggy, it wasn't lightning. That's the point. It was like purely merit.
Well, that's not 100% true. Not to take anything away from Lando, but
That's
Max
why
did
I was
have
like,
floor
haters gonna
damage.
hate. Well,
But
Max
to
was
be
the one.
fair, it was his own fault.
It was his
having
own
floor,
fault. He's the
floor
one that went
damage.
into the cone. So needless to say, I'm quite excited for it this weekend. So I'm going to say a McLaren and Mercedes in the top 5.
Okay, exciting. I'm going to go really hot. I'm going to say a Charles win. So I do think lightning can strike twice, but it's about time for Charles to get something good here. I think being in Italy with Ferrari, Carlos has been more in the spotlight this season because he's had much more of a fire under him, but it's time for Charles to get something good. I'm going to say he's going to win.
Okay, you might have just jinxed it, but we'll let you
Isn't
have
that
it.
what hot takes are for?
Yeah, that's why they never come true. And we hate ourselves every time we do a recap.
All right, for some news. So, as we were mentioning, remember when Gunther Steiner sued Haas a few weeks ago for using his likeness after he left the team? Well, Haas is suing him right back. It was reported this week that Haas Automation, the parent company, is suing Steiner for alleged trademark infringements in his Surviving to Drive autobiography. Gunther was promoting the book yesterday or a couple days ago on Instagram for, I think, winning an award or something. So this is messy. It's going to be a ride.
Also, Surviving to Drive, maybe Drive to Survive, has some issues with that too. Who knows? I'm literally sitting here as we're recording, seeing the book in my bookshelf and being like,
yeah,
ooh.
same.
Okay, other news. If it wasn't enough for Ferrari to take Lewis Hamilton from Mercedes, they have now confirmed this week that they have signed the Mercedes duo, Jerome D'Ambrosio and Loic Serra. So Jerome is an ex-F1 driver who advised for Mercedes under Toto, and he will now be Ferrari's deputy team principal. And Loic Serra, he's an engineer who was Mercedes's platform director, and now he's joining Ferrari as the head of chassis performance engineering.
This is so interesting to me because, well, there's got to be some sort of poaching contracts with
For sure
Lewis and Mercedes. And I'm not saying Lewis is poaching, but Fred is definitely cooking. And
someone DM'd us and they're like, Don Fred strikes again.
Yeah, which is fascinating to me because also, I mean, there are no friends in Formula One, but Toto and Fred are actually good friends, which is very interesting to me as well because Fred is, I don't know if you can call this cleaning house, but it's feeling like it's trending that direction.
Ooh, cannot wait.
What if Adrian Newey signs with Ferrari? This is going to be wild. Ferrari to the moon.
I hope that we can use the clip of you just saying that one day if it happens, because you're going to be a prophet. What with Lando win basically predicted by you, and then now that.
Well, every single one of my hot takes doesn't come true, so I have to get some wins somewhere, some dubs. After months of speculation that F1 is planning on developing a race in Chicago in 2026 or beyond, F1 put the rumors to bed this week and confirmed there are no current plans or agreements for a Chicago Grand Prix. This all sort of kicked off when F1, it was seen that F1 had trademarked the F1 Chicago Grand Prix, but I do think F1 probably does that more generally, just as sort of legal protection.
And to always keep a news story running, you know?
Exactly. I did see a funny meme of like the F1 calendar in 2027, and it was all US races. It was 26 US races.
Surprise, F1 has turned into NASCAR. Other news items to wrap up. So as we reported before, Brad Pitt is making an F1 movie, and the news is reporting this week that the movie's budget has reached $300 million, which means it's the most expensive movie ever made, even more than Avatar or Jurassic World.
What?
Yeah. And I feel like we've heard nothing about how the movie's progressing, when it's going to go. Like, it's probably just taking forever because, well, yeah.
We'll see. There's an F2 race this weekend as well. So as we were talking about Kimi Antonelli, the Mercedes F2 rookie and F1 hopeful, he'll be racing for Prema at this weekend's F2 race. We'll be looking to beat his best finish of P4. So all eyes will be on him after news that Williams requested a super license for him from the FIA a few weeks ago in Miami. Now, we don't know if that's just for him to drive in practice or if that's something more substantial, but definitely someone to keep an eye on at the F2 race this weekend. And with that, so excited for the race. We will chat with you all soon, and let's head on over to our incredible